Bases dropped on a new edition of SDH, January 23rd. It's a Thursday. That means we are taking your Thursday thoughts on Twitter, @SoccerDownHere. Those thoughts can be more about Julian Gressel. They can be about other sources of recruitment for Atlanta United. They can be about Jozy Altidore maybe being on the outs in Toronto after being very vocal about how they handled Michael Bradley's injury. Those thoughts could be about Chicharito and his arrival last night in Los Angeles. They could be about really anything you want them to be. So tweet at us @SoccerDownHere. Let us know what you're thinking about on a Thursday morning. Jason Longshore, John Nelson with you. How are you doing, John?
One foot in front of the other, brother. Try to look like I know what I'm doing.
Okay, well, that's always good. Better than Ed Woodward looking to Buenos Aires and Carlos Tevez as the Marcus Rashford replacement, I guess, for a short term. This is hitting on Teise right now in Argentina. Okay. If I was the owner of the club and that was suggested by my sporting director, I would probably start looking for another sporting director immediately after the meeting is over. So I don't know. Carlos Tevez would have been a player who should have stayed at Manchester United longer, in my opinion, but that's just me. He would have been a great addition for MLS a few years ago. I don't think he'd be a great addition for MLS right now, let alone going back and saving Manchester United right now. That's what can happen very fast, and it's not very fast here, but it was something that has not been stopped. The slide of Manchester United has not been stopped, and it feels like they just keep leaning into it. I've said it on Soccer Over There, and I'm sure we'll talk about it on Crumpets and Espresso tomorrow and probably on Monday on Soccer Over There. But, you know, I've never thought up until maybe now that you had to move on from Ole right now. Maybe after yesterday, you might have to. Yeah. It still doesn't fix everything. You can do that, and it doesn't mean that anything's fixed. It might have gotten to the point now that you have to. And if that's the case, that's the case. You might have a manager come in and pick up a few more points. You might have a manager come in and turn a couple of those losses into draws, a couple of those draws into wins. You might move up a couple spots in the table. All that's good. If you don't get the recruitment right, if you don't get the roster building right, doesn't matter who's on the touchline. You know, you can go get Allegri, which is a name that's been bandied around. You can go try to bring Pochettino back from the Asado in Rosario in Argentina. He might be up for that to start next season. You can do all that. It doesn't change anything dramatically until you get better roster recruitment. And as we've talked about here in Atlanta this week, building your roster, when you start looking at move by move by move individually, and you start looking at the season in this competition and this 6 months and this 6 months, you can get out of whack really fast. You can have things derail you really fast. If you go out and rush signings, if you go out and overspend on signings, if you hold on to guys too long, there's all of that factors in. If you do those things incorrectly, if you build the squad incorrectly, you're in the situation that Manchester United's in. I mean, let's go from after when Ferguson retired. David Moyes, good manager. I mean, is he the greatest in the world? I don't know if he's that, but good manager. Did very well at Everton. Didn't even get through a year. Okay, you rush that one. You go to Louis van Gaal. Very well-respected manager. Maybe a little past it at that point, sure. That was his last job. Very very well-respected manager who has won in a lot of places. Jose Mourinho. He told you he's won. He told you how many trophies he's had on a regular basis.
Three.
Yeah. And he won trophies in Manchester, too. But did he reverse these issues? No, he didn't. Ole, same thing. I mean, Ole's not as respected of a manager as the three that preceded him. But no. If you don't have the squad built the right way and you don't do it with thought and strategy, you can end up in these situations very easily. Nick Alifi, host of Soccer Over There, has told us about this with Milan as well. If you don't handle it, you can get stuck, and no manager is going to bail you out of that. Great managers can find some points for you where maybe you shouldn't have earned them, but if you don't have the squad to compete, you're in trouble. And this goes back to what I've had some people reach out to me and say, and I've seen it, around the conversation, around the Twitter water cooler, if you will, that Atlanta United's roster, Atlanta United's lineup especially, is so much worse than it was last year. I'm just not buying it.
Nope.
I'm not buying it. Doesn't mean it can't be improved. Don't get me wrong here. It can be improved. I think any roster in MLS, I think any lineup in MLS can be improved. This one can be as well. But this roster, this lineup, is not the huge issue that you might think. And let's look at a couple things that have happened. Let's look at a couple very important things here. So, all right. Meza coming in and replacing Leandro Gonzalez-Pirez. Little bit of a like for like, but let's look at some of the reasoning behind it. Gonzalez-Pirez wanted more money. That's understood. He is getting that now. And we mentioned it over the last couple of days. This is something that Carlos Bocanegra spoke about. If there was an opportunity for him to make more money, his agent was interested. Leandro was interested. That opportunity came. The club did the right thing by the player and got maximum value back. Part of that max value back is Meza, a veteran, a guy who comes in a couple years older than Leandro, a guy who gives you that stability, a guy with a lot of experience in Mexico, but also in South America. You're going to be smooth in that transition, you would expect. Of course, we never know these things. It can blow up in your face. You can get it wrong even if you put in all the work. This one doesn't look like it's going to be that. Outside of that move where you got 2 years older, Brooks Lennon, younger than Julian Gressel. Younger than Julian Gressel when he came into the team. So you've gotten younger on that right side. George Bello is going to have a lot of opportunity to play. A lot more than he did last year because of injury. Young. You're getting younger in some spots. Castillo, veteran, again, depth, helping Bello along. I thought the interview with Castillo with that Doug Robertson had at the HAC is very important here because he knows that's part of his role, to help the youngster along, for Bello to be that man eventually. Is he that man this year? I would love to see it. It's also 18. Let's see if he can become that. If he's not, you've got a steady hand to give him that helping hand. Anton Walks, it's funny. I think we think of him as a veteran because he was here in 2017. He's 22 years old, so he's about to be 23. Another young player who can give you what you need off the bench, and that's going to be a guy who can play anywhere on the back line, can play in the holding midfield. You've gotten younger in a couple spots. You've got some young guys that are going to get some more time here. Potentially, and we know the rumors that are out there, all of those are young. All of those are guys who would come in, be under the age of 23, be guys who can come in and play, but also grow and also be potential assets down the road. You have to bring that new blood into a team. You can't let a group get stale as a whole, but you have to bring that new blood into the team with the idea of we want them to contribute now, but we also want them to be better at the end of the year, and we want them to be better next year, and we want to continue to grow. the way you construct a roster can't be, I think, even really evaluated completely move by move by move. And that's where you can get into trouble. I know we've had a couple questions that'll lead us down this path, and we'll get there. But it's about the construction as a whole. And you can even look at a window's work, what the team will do in this window, what the team will do in the summer window. And unless you're looking at the big picture, you might not understand why they did certain things at certain times. There is a big picture at play that you're trying to prevent what we've seen at Manchester United, what we've seen at Milan, what we've seen at other clubs in the past, where they didn't recycle the squad, they didn't bring young players through, and they didn't get that recruitment right. And you can do a lot of damage if you don't get those things correct.
And I think that's the other thing that fans, and those who add to our timeline, like you said, we'll get into that because some folks have questions this morning. It's like, take it window by window by window, but at the same time, take it with all of the transactions and add to that the growth of players that are within the system. How are they continuing to grow and improve? And add that to the entire picture of things. Yes, you can take it a window at a time, but look at the larger picture and how everything is evolving going forward with all the pieces that are here.
It's a process, and it's an evolution, and we'll see how this goes. Lots of questions. Would love to get to those. It's a Thursday Thoughts edition. Why don't we just go ahead and get started with the Twitter timeline, John, as I crack open a Red Bull to get us going.
There you go. See, I waited for you to do that.
About.
Nathan Pugh. I hope old and new footy fans have calmed down on Atlanta. We're lucky to have a good owner and active front office. Would you want to be like the Cowboys or Redskins? Would you like to be like Bolton Wanderers? Would you want to be Man U right now? Hashtag Thursday Thoughts.
Those are good examples. It's tough. And that's, I think, one of the overriding themes of Bocanegra's comments this week. To do that job, you have to take emotion out of it. You do. And I think what Atlanta's done a pretty good job of is finding that balance between doing right by the club, keeping the club moving in the right direction, but also doing right by the players involved, because that's only going to help you in the long run too. We talked about it on Stoppage Time yesterday. You look at 4 moves that all had differences in them, but Carlos Carmona, Miguel Almiron, Leandro Gonzalez-Pirez, Julian Gressel, all of those, the player got what they wanted. The club got as much value back as they possibly could. And it appears that in all of them, no one is hurt by the move. The club isn't going to suffer in the move, and the player's not going to suffer in the move because they got what they wanted. Whether it was opportunity, whether it was getting back closer to home in Carmona's case, whether it was getting to Europe in Almiron's case, more money in Gressel and LGP's case, they were able to find that balance and try to find the win-win-win for everybody involved. It's tough to do, and it's a credit, I think, to the club's mentality in how they've treated the players, because in these situations, you can just auction off to the highest bidder. You can tell Carmona at that case, in that point, no, we're not going to let you go. We need you here. It's too late in the window to get the replacement we would like. We need you right now. No, we're not going to move you on. And he's under contract. They would have been in their rights to do that. But they didn't. They made it work for the first half of 2018. They identified Eric Remedi, and they brought him in the summer, and it worked out pretty good. That's what you have to do sometimes. I don't think they planned on Leandro Gonzalez-Pirez being sold in this window. They bounced back in a pretty good way to bring in Fernando Mesa. I think the Julian Gressel trade was always something that was a possibility in this, because when you're negotiating for over a year, trying to find dollar figures that make sense, you get a pretty good sense of, man, we're really far apart, we're really close, we think this is going to happen. It might happen or it might not happen. And you have to be prepared for all of those possibilities. Acquiring Brooks Lennon is part of being prepared. So you had cover. Does that mean you might not go and get more cover? Who knows? But like we've said many times here, I think Brooks Lennon provides cover, but I also think this is an opportunity for Tito Villalba, when the team plays a 4-3-3, to get back to his best. He's got to be fit. He's got to be sharp. He's got pressure on him in a pretty big way going into this season because Julian Gressel has produced average of 5 goals, average of just under 12 assists per season. Can Tito match that? In 2017, he surpassed it. And if this team's going to play out of a 4-3-3 a lot, you're going to need that type of production. You're going to need it. So I think it's really tough to do right by the player, right by the club, make good deals because then people want to deal with you, and make it all fit as best you can. I think the club's done a good job of that. I think this has been a trying off season, especially because of the LGP one. You just didn't necessarily expect to happen when it did. But that's the life of this. It's what's going to happen because you're in a cap league where players develop and grow into bigger roles, which means they grow into bigger salaries, which means you have to make tough decisions. And if you're an Atlanta sports fan, and this is some of the reaction I've gotten, which is funny because if you're an Atlanta sports fan, you've been through this. You know, what was the most recent talking points about the Falcons? You've got Austin Hooper right now, which is a very similar case to what we've been talking about. A player came in as a, third-round draft pick, if I remember, who's become a big part of the offense. You'd love to keep him. He's also a player who would love to get paid, and he's going to get paid. Is he going to get paid here? If he does, are you going to be able to go get that pass rusher on the defensive end that you'd like to get? Are you going to be able to go spend in free agency and upgrade the offensive line? That's the decision you got to make in a cap league. Honestly, same here as John fades into the abyss for a second. This is a situation where if you've identified the number 8 or 6 or central midfield, let's leave it a little broader, and that's a position you want to upgrade, you want to spend more money on, can you spend the money on the right side where you have other options, where you've been able to acquire other options, but also you have an option like Villalba in-house? Can you spend the money that it sounds like DC is going to on Julian Gressel and upgrade in other spots? Where are you going to have to sacrifice? Because that's what a salary cap makes you do. You're going to have to find a spot where you either draft well, you develop well, you get production unexpectedly from a player on a lower salary. You're going to have to do those things to be successful in a league like this. Now, MLS has ways that you can stretch it. Every league does because that's just what happens as these salary caps evolve. But MLS with designated players, with young designated players especially, with guys who are off the books, who are homegrowns that are going to be able to develop and play and be effective. A guy like George Bello is a big part of this. If you get good production out of the left side with Bello, who's a homegrown, who's not on your salary cap, and Castillo, a veteran, who's probably on a very manageable number, that also helps you spread the wealth around, right? That's what this is all about. You know, the Falcons just went through these tough decisions last year about how you balance getting better with keeping a Deion Jones, with keeping a Grady Jarrett. It's what a salary cap does. And maybe that's a little unique in the world of soccer for our longtime soccer fans who look at Manchester United and it's like, why are you burning money by making bad signings? It's like, you know, if you're Manchester City, if you're Liverpool, you can go spend what you want. You can go get whatever you want. You can go do whatever you want in the market because you have that money to do it and you don't have any limitations. We'll get John back in a minute. He keeps disappearing on me. In the soccer world, in every other league, And financial fair play is starting to become a thing that will affect this. It's not a salary cap per se, but it's a thing that will have these effects on building a team similar to a salary cap. We're starting to see that in a few cases. But in a lot of leagues, look, if you want to keep a player that you brought in at 24 years old and has done what Julian Gressel's done here, you just spend the money and you do it. And then it's about your budget. It's not about, cap limitations or rules or any of that. It's just about how much you want to spend. Sadly, that's just not the case here. That's not how MLS will work. It's not how it will ever be. And that's why you get into these very difficult discussions and difficult situations in managing it. And you have to make the best of it. You have to find a way to make the best of it and get the most value you can. It's a very interesting world that MLS is in at times, but that's why these guys get paid the money that they do, and that's why they sometimes have to make difficult decisions. As Nathan said, in American sports, you can look at the Cowboys, you can look at the Redskins. They have struggled to make proper decisions, and they're heritage franchises that it's been bad times for them. You look at heritage clubs like a Manchester United, like a Milan, like others, and when you make a lot of bad decisions in a lot of different ways, whether it's spending too much here, whether it's holding on to this guy, whether it's not recycling the squad, whether it's not bringing young players through, whether it's not bringing in the right young players, what have you, you can end up in a bad place a little bit quicker than you think. You can get a little bit of whiplash from that if you're not careful. So it's all part of it. And that's why it's hard to take one move in isolation and burn everything down because of it.
With the Cowboys, a lot of folks pin themselves to one individual. With the Redskins, they pin themselves onto one individual. Manchester United, they look at one individual while they still look at the ownership group. Bolton is somewhat systemic when you're looking at Nathan's ideas, but you see how one person can pull the whole Jenga and completely and totally mess things up.
It's tough. It's very tough. Sometimes it's one bad decision that can hurt you. Other times it's a series of bad decisions. But you have to be ready to deal when the time comes. Sometimes it comes unexpectedly. Like I said, I think the Leandro Gonzalez-Perez one was unexpected. The Julian Gressel one, probably not unexpected. Probably hoped it wouldn't be the case. But you knew that contract was coming up, and it was pretty obvious that Julian Gressel was frustrated, wanted more money. And when it gets to the point that he asks for the trade, I mean, there's nothing more you can do, honestly. You have to get the best deal for the club. And I think that they did that. Now we see what happens next. And that's the thing. And what I would say is think back to that Carmona situation where you had to make the move later than this in preseason, and they did. And it was the summer window when Remedi came in that was the true replacement. Worked out pretty good in 2018 last time I checked. So These things can happen. I think this team has the depth. We went through all the different shapes and formations and depth charts yesterday on Stoppage Time. I think they have the depth right now. I think they can get better, but they don't have to make a desperation move. And that's a good spot to be in because you've got the resources, you've got the allocation money now that you're going to have to spend. You've got that to make a good move, but you don't have to make a bad move because you have to have a player in the spot. That's why when you look at any of these moves, you have to look at the totality of the situation. When you make all the best of every situation and you have the depth and you have 2, 3, 4 starting options that you're comfortable with in each position. And yes, some of them are the same player who overlaps. I know, and that's something a lot of people want to point out. I get it. You'd like to have 30 players that can give you that. Right now, you've got 22. But you've got good cover everywhere, which, again, means you don't have to rush into a bad move. So hopefully the right move comes along tomorrow. In a perfect world, you get that player in as soon as possible and everything's great. But you've got the ability now to make sure you do it correctly rather than do it out of desperation, rather than Manchester United reportedly talking to Carlos Tevez.
Oof. Since we're talking team, I'll go to Tafka's question. He says his question for the day, why is it frequently stated that we're looking for a number 8 still? We purchased an 8 in this window, Heinemann, and Remedi's more of an 8 than he is a 6, 60-40 in his opinion. Shouldn't we be saying a 6 is a target?
Well, the club said an 8 specifically, so that's why it keeps getting repeated. Heinemann, I think he has the ability to be a 6. He hasn't played in a 6 role here at all. He has not played that here at all. He did play that some during his time in Scotland. I think he's a guy who can sit deeper. I think he's a guy who can give you solid defensive work. And that would be my question about him as a 6 primarily. Is he good enough defensively to get the job done there? You know, let's go back to the playoffs last year. Edward Atuesta was a best 11 player in MLS, but was he good enough defensively for LAFC when they needed it? Probably not. And that's something he's going to have to work on if he's going to stay in that role. Heinemann could be a similar case. You know what you get when you're in possession. You know what you get on the ball. Are you going to get enough defensively? So I could see this team go 6 or 8. Because at the 6, you do have a few different options, honestly. You've got Jeff Larentowicz, who I think is still a starting level player right now. You've got Mo Adams, who I think Mo Adams could be a surprise this year. I do. You've got Eric Remedi, who has played as a 6 here. He's also played as a 6 at Bonfield. He played a lot of times at Bonfield before he came to Atlanta in a 4-1-4-1, where it was him by himself. Bonfield sent 5 guys forward, and Remedi had to do all of the defensive work in the central midfield. So it can be done. Could you go get a 6? Yeah. Could you move the pieces around and play Fernando Mesa as a 6? You could. Necaxa did that quite a bit. Anton Walks is a reserve at the 6. I think he's a reserve there. I don't think he's a starting level talent there. I have to see it more because we never saw it here in Atlanta in 2017. He did play it some at Tottenham on his way to Atlanta. He did play it some at Portsmouth. Meza would be the interesting one, and this is where the recruitment opportunities for Atlanta can take a lot of different turns. You've got a lot of flexibility here because of pieces you can move around. I think you're best in a 4-3-3. I think you're best with Meza and Robinson together, and I think you're best in adding a central midfielder that fits the group. It doesn't necessarily have to be strictly 6, strictly 8. I think you want a complete player who can give you the defensive responsibilities. And the player that has been linked in Villasanti is a player who can give you that. There are others in that kind of mold. I think you've got options, but if they're saying 8, does that mean they're trying to throw people off? Maybe. Wouldn't be the first time. Are they trying to find a player? Because an 8, a lot of times when we talk about that role, you're talking about somebody who can do both. You're talking about somebody who can play defensively but also play in an attacking sense. Are you looking for a well-rounded, complete central midfielder? And then you find the right chemistry with your central midfield options. And that's going to be the biggest thing here. When you get to that point, you know, if it's Heinemann, and we'll say Villasanti right now because he's the name who's been linked. If it's Heinemann and Villasanti, is that duo better than Villasanti and Larentowicz or Villasanti and Remedi? Don't know until you see it. And those are the things that you'll have to find from Frank de Boer, both in training and in matches. So that's why you'd love to get a guy in tomorrow and be in good shape to have that chemistry build quicker. But you're also looking for a player with experience who's played matches before. You're not looking at an 18-year-old to come in with limited experience. Villasanti's not that, and I don't think you would look much younger than that because you'd want somebody who can hit the ground running. It's going to be the chemistry, and whether that player plays a pure 8 or a pure 6 or honestly somewhere in between, and that's what we're starting to see more and more around the world. If you have the front four, and we're talking 4-3-3 right now. If you have the front four with Pitti as the 10 behind Joseph and Barco and Villalba flanking that, okay, you've got a front four that can go, and you want them to go. You're not asking for a ton of defensive responsibilities. So if you pair in that midfield, or the trio, behind Pitti with two guys who are going to sit a little bit more, who are comfortable defending and doing the defensive work, flaring out wide and helping the fullbacks when needed, especially when they step forward. That's what you're looking for. And a number 8 type of personality is what you need, even if here they're playing maybe a little bit more of a 6-8 or even some of a 6 role.
Can you hit the stinger for breaking news?
Sure, let's do it.
Atlanta United signs Jake Mulroney from Heart of Midlothian FC.
Thought this one was coming, and the news had gotten a little stronger on that. So, Jake Mulroney is a guy who is going to come in and I think be somewhat similar to Dion Pereira, and he's a young player from Europe who. Actually, Mulroney has more first-team experience in a great deal than Pereira did, but it's at a little bit different level. The Scottish Premiership is not Watford, where Pereira came from. Mulroney played a good bit in the second division in Scotland as well. He gives you more pace from what I've seen. He also gives you more versatility. He can play on the left or the right side, and he can also give you versatility as a fullback. So this is another element of building versatility and strength in this group. So it's exciting. It's exciting to see this group come together. You want to see these guys get in as quickly as possible. I am waiting to see how many people overreact and think Mulroney is a direct replacement for Julian Gressel. He's not. I think more than anything, he's a replacement for Dion Pereira on this roster.
Quoting Carlos Bocanegra, we're excited to add another quality attacking player to our club in Jake. He's a direct player with a lot of pace who can play anywhere across the front three. As he's in the middle of his season, Jake will be able to get up to full fitness quickly and immediately compete, end quote.
Yep. I think his pace is probably the number one thing that has grabbed the attention of the club. And remember, with the relationship with Aberdeen, a club like Aberdeen has a strong scouting department, and they're going to know the league, and they're going to know the landscape in Scotland inside and out. So Mulroney would have that type of information coming over to Atlanta United. Also, he's a player who has played a good bit for Republic of Ireland national teams, youth national teams. That factors in here too. So he's a guy who could be a diamond in the rough. I think his pace is the number one thing he brings to the table, along with that ability to not just be a wing option, but to give you cover on both sides in the back as well. This is another player who, when you look at the depth chart, in a 4-3-3 gives you cover at 4 spots. Left wing, left back, right wing, right back. You look at a 3-5-2, he's helping you as a wing back. And guys with pace who can play in the back or on the wing back is usually a great spot for them. So you've got another guy who can help this group. Is he going to start 30 games? I don't think so. He might. I don't think so. I don't think that's the expectation.
Michael Head this morning on his hashtag Thursday Thoughts, since we're sticking with Atlanta United right now, not to continue to beat the horse, but can you please explain why the club will be paying Heinemann and not Gressel? Seems like the same amount of money. Is it because they could not use TAM or GAM for Gressel? MLS cap rules are confusing. Thinking positive thought.
Yeah, the MLS cap rules are confusing, and it sounds like MLS would have to approve any TAM signing, period. And the rules that are written and published and on the MLS website might not actually be the rules that are enforced, which can lead to a lot of confusion. I don't know if they could have done it with Tam or not. I think they could have. I'm assuming that it'll be Tam at DC, but that's not a definite because you could use GAM. To say that you couldn't do it is not accurate. The mechanisms you could do it through are not 100% clear, but it sounds like they could have used Tam if they wanted to. It's more about the amounts, and this is where you get into I think, a dangerous spot of saying, well, they paid Hyndman instead of paying Gressel. The way I think it went down, and this is just me looking at it from the outside and timing and trying to think about the big picture, not just individual move by move. They brought in Emerson Hyndman in the summer. According to the reporting that came out after the Darlington-Nagbe trade, Doug Robertson said that Darlington-Nagbe turned down another offer, probably the final offer for a long-term deal to stay in Atlanta in the summer. Was it before they brought in Hyndman? Was it after? Was it around the same time? Don't know. Don't know the timing exactly. But I think Hyndman coming in first on loan and then making the deal permanent was much more of a reaction to Nagbe as opposed to Gressel. Because I don't think Gressel long-term was looked at as a central midfielder. I don't think he should have been. I don't think he's as effective there. So Hyndman's a different situation altogether. And it's also about building that leverage. I think if you're looking at a reaction to Gressel, it would be Brooks Lennon. That would be the reaction to it. And again, I don't think it's a direct replacement. I think it's more about leverage. You knew that you'd made offers last year this time. You knew you'd made offers in the summer. The comments had already been made publicly before the Toronto playoff game, let alone after on the final media day that the team had. So you kind of had a pretty good sense that this might not get done. And you have to get that cover. I don't think Hyndman's related to Gressel. It's probably more related to Nagbe. I think Lennon is more related to Gressel. But you have to do those things in case. Because if you don't, you can get stuck. Now, with Gressel, you had cover in some different ways with Escobar at right back, who can play as a wing back, but you'd like to have him in the middle, so giving Lennon this opportunity as a wing back allows you to play, I think, the strongest team you can. If you were looking to go 4-3-3, maybe that changes the evaluation of Gressel a little bit too. And then you get into the Gressel or Villalba conversation on the right side. And that's a conversation that's been had here before, right? That's come up. You know, who should play there? In a 4-3-3, Gressel is not as effective there as he is in a 3-5-2 as a wingback. And I think the reason why the wingback role really suits him is he can hit that cross from deep. He doesn't have to get to the end line as much, although we've seen him do that too. And he doesn't have as much pure defensive responsibilities as if he was a right back. He's attacking like a right back, but he doesn't have to defend like a right back because he's got cover. That suited him to a T. When he played centrally, good but not as effective. When he played as a right wing in a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1, pretty much the same thing. Good, better than in the middle in my opinion, but not as effective. It was the 3-5-2 that got the best out of him, but the 3-5-2 has limitations in other places. And when you start thinking big picture, it's like, do we want to get out of the 3-5-2 a little bit more? Is Gressel going to be worth what he's asking for in a different role? And that's a valid question to have. And if you don't feel that you can find the number that matches up, then you have to go get cover. I think Lennon is more than Hyndman the reaction to Gressel, and he's not making as much money either. It does do two things. Instead of paying even what you were proposing to Gressel, and we don't know what that was, but you would assume that it was, you know, maybe not the amount that has been reported that he's going to sign in DC, but not half of that either, I don't think. Probably more than that, probably in the 500,000 range. Let's just say that as a nice round number. all right, Lennon's not going to be in that conversation, you don't think, in terms of salary, and you're getting, $1 million, maybe 1.1 in allocation money to go better your squad elsewhere. And that's the number one element here, because it's not even just a replacement like for like. It's, you added 1.1 million of targeted allocation money to make your squad better in other positions too. And those are the things you have to do to get better.
Lieutenant Dave comes in this morning. He says, you may not have time today, but I think we do. But
we
he
got
says,
time.
We get time. But he says, but sometime in the future, can you give a small class on what a number 6 or a number 10, etc. is? I'm learning lots from you guys, but lacking in this area.
I'll keep it really simple for now, instead of going into super detail. Maybe this is something we'll do as we get deeper into preseason. When you look at a midfield group of 3, which is typical for how a lot of teams are playing right now. The 6 is the defensive one. The 10 is the attacking one. The 8 is the box-to-box. The numbers come from the old way of describing formations, but also assigning numbers for teams when they play. You used to not actually have a dedicated number. You would wear the number of the position you were playing. It's before my time, but that's kind of how it evolved. In Argentina, they call the 6 the 5 because of different conventions. So, you'll get that comparison, which makes it even more confusing. We use 6 because that's what's commonly used in the United States. That's what the Federation has used in their coaching courses, so we stick to that because more people would follow that nomenclature. But think about it that way. In a midfield trio, when it's perfectly balanced, and not every team wants to do it that way, but when it's perfectly balanced, you have a defensive midfielder of the 3, that's the 6. You have a mix of box-to-box who's doing some defense, who's doing some attack, that's the 8. The playmaker, the number 10, the attacking one, that's your 10. So that's the very quick way of looking at it. But just like we talked about with Atlanta talking about needing an 8, I could see that 8 be a little bit more of a 6/8. Because depending on how you want to line up that midfield, we mentioned it with Pitti as a 10. Let's say you go into a match and you feel like, man, this team that we're playing, what they like to do is have 2 attacking central midfielders. They want to play 2 10s or a 10 and a very attack-minded 8. We need a little more cover in the midfield. Let's play 2 defensive-minded central midfielders. Let's say right now, Lorenowitz and Mo Adams together. Let's lock that down. And then maybe we can't play a number 10. Maybe we need somebody who's going to be a little bit deeper to help them. Maybe that's where Remedi or Heinemann comes in and is playing a little more deep. Maybe it's 2 6s and an 8 for that match. Some matches you might say, man, this team's really weak in the central midfield. They have a really poor defensive midfielder. Their number 6 is not strong. Let's play Pitti, and let's see if we can get, whether it's Heinemann playing in a more attack-minded role, don't come back as much, Heinemann. Push forward. Maybe you can get really bold and move Pitti and Barco both in there. Things can happen where your 6, 8, 10 ideal could end up being 2 6s and a 10, 2 6s and an 8, or a 6 and 2 10s, or a 6 and 2 8s. You can mix and match. But that's the basics. 6 defense, 8 mix, 10 attack.
ATL UTD fan number 1 with an Atlanta United question this morning. Does anybody know when tickets for the CONCACAF Atlanta United Motagua at the Fraction go on sale?
Don't know. Not sure when that happens. I don't know if they've gone out to season ticket holders yet. And that's what's hard about the first team games at Fifth Third, because the season ticket base is far bigger than the capacity there. So I don't think any match with the first team, whether it's CONCACAF or Open Cup, has actually gone to a public sale. I think season ticket holders have always bought those tickets up. Now, I don't know if you're a season ticket holder or not. I would imagine if they haven't, they'll go out to season ticket holders very, very soon.
Lewis Martin with Thursday thoughts. He says he hates losing LGP, Nagbe, and Gressel too, but my trust in the system is much higher than my emotions. The team will look different in 2020, but they look different each season. # trust the process.
Yeah, and that's something that you kind of get into when you look back. After 2017, going into 2018, so from a starting perspective, who'd you lose? You lost Anton Walks, who was starting for you in the second half of the season. You lost Carlos Carmona. You lost Yamil Assad. So you lost 3 starters after 2017. 2018 worked out pretty good. After 2018, you lost Miguel Almiron. You lost Greg Garza. Who else did you lose? That might be it. I think that's it. After 18 into 19. So now, 19 into 20, center back LGP, central midfielder Darlington Nagbe, and now right wing back / right wing Julian Gressel. Okay, and depth pieces too. I'm starting from the starting positions.
Right.
So it's not completely different than it's been in the past. It happens. It's part of the turnover. I think what's harder now is it's, 2 guys in Leandro Gonzalez Perez, Julian Gressel, who were here day one, and Darlington Nagbe, who came in at the end of 2017 after the season ended. So it's not guys who were here for a year like in 2017, guys who'd been here for a while. And that's the emotional pull of it, and that's completely understandable. But this is the nature of these things. You keep a core together, but you're going to have to make changes. And, for some people, 2019 was not a good season. For some, it was a successful season because you had 2 trophies. If it wasn't a successful season and people were complaining, you can't complain about changes because you're trying to get better. And that's the whole idea here. It's not to get worse. It's to get better. And it's also to get better in the way that fits this club. Get younger, bring in guys who have resale value that you can develop. And when you do have to make these moves, and we don't know the details on LGP, but you did bring Meza in that situation, we know the details on Gressel and Nagbe, and they were both very lucrative. And you gave yourself the ability to bring in better pieces and make this team better. And also fit that long-term strategy of bringing in resources, developing them, moving them on, trying to find the win-win-win for everybody, and trying to win trophies. I think the surprise for me has been the element of some people thinking that last part has disappeared. And it doesn't make any sense that would be the case.
Random question of the day from Tafka. What former Atlanta United player will become the first professional level head coach?
And I'm going to assume professional level, like at a professional club, not in a professional academy.
Sure.
The one who's not a former professional yet, and Jeff Lorenowitz.
Yeah.
And it's going to be down to if he wants to do that. I think he's got the brain for it. I think he's got the mentality for it. I think he'd be outstanding. It's just going to be down to what he wants to do when that time comes. I don't know if Parkhurst wants to go down that road. Not sure. I think he would be a great candidate for it as well. I don't know if either of those guys have done anything in the way of coaching certifications and coaching education to plan for that. I think they're both very cerebral players. So those are the kinds of players generally that do well as managers. I'm trying to think of others. We're seeing Kenwyn Jones do some different things in Trinidad and Tobago, and I'll be curious to see what his long-term future is out of the game. Carlos Carmona is another one. I think a really smart player. Colo Colo just won a trophy. I think they won the cup in Chile. He was part of that. I wonder if he'll go down that road when his playing days are done. But Lorenowitz is the one that immediately comes to mind for me.
Yeah, I had Jeff and Michael Parkhurst as my number 1 and 2 when it came to that particular idea, because of how they approach the game, because of their thoughtfulness when it comes to how they want to do things on the pitch. So that was literally the first 2 that popped into my head as I was reading the question.
Yeah, Lorenowitz is the one I've said from early on that I felt like would be that guy. I felt like he would be the one, and we'll see. I don't know when he's going to stop playing because he's still playing at an extremely high level.
Yeah. At the age of 9,007, Jeff Lorenowitz retires.
Yes. When he is finally beaten in a fitness test.
Yes. Let's see. Non-Atlanta United stuff this morning.
Okay.
Emery Russell. What are y'all's thoughts on the Altidore rumors out of Toronto? Any chance he moves somewhere else in the league before the season starts? If he does, this will go down as one of the wildest off seasons in league history. # Thursday Thoughts.
Yeah, this is kind of wild. Hercules Gomez of ESPN tweeted yesterday that Altidore's comments about Toronto's handling of Michael Bradley's ankle injury and the resulting surgery that takes him out for 4 months have the club considering a move to get rid of Altidore. If that's accurate, then sure, I could see him moving. I've seen some of the reaction to like, oh yeah, I would have moved him before. Well, they just re-signed him, so that's what's so crazy about it is it's not like Jozy being outspoken is news.
No,
he's been that before, and he's been that about the club before. So you just re-signed him.
So who can handle that salary figure, you think?
Well, he's a designated player. You're not thinking about it as a salary figure because it's not fitting it under the cap. Who's got a DP slot? There's plenty of teams that have DP slots. I think from where he fits best and where he can have the most impact, Minnesota. And the question is, are they going to be able to get Luis Amarilla? We've been talking about this for weeks. And the longer it goes, the less you think it's likely. But Adrian Heath has still said it. If I'm Minnesota at this point, I'm saying, well, Luis, we've made you a bunch of offers. Yes or no? Because now we have another option. And that I'd play it that way. Because if you can't get Amarilla on the contract you want, on the deal you want, you go and you make the deal with Toronto and you bring in Jozy Altidore. And do you think Jozy Altidore is going to score more goals than Angelo Rodriguez or Mason Toy with that team? Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And you have players that would be a good fit for Toronto that you can deal. And that's the important thing here when you're trying to find a way to make this work. You can send allocation money. And we don't know where Minnesota is in terms of allocation money and how much they have to trade. But this is what they have in terms of players that Toronto could use to replace Nicolas Benezet. Robin Lod, Ethan Finley, Kevin Molino. All 3 starters. Probably not all 3 starters in Minnesota. If you were to offer, I'm wondering who would be the most attractive to Toronto. Molino has injury history. I think he could be. I honestly think it might be Ethan Finley. If you traded Ethan Finley and $600,000-700,000 in allocation money to Toronto for Jozy Altidore, I think Toronto would take that. I think they'd be happy with it. I think then Minnesota could have an attack with Jozy Altidore, Kevin Molino, Thomas Chacon, their young designated player number 10, Robin Lod, with Alonso and Gregush behind that. And Minnesota's also talked about going out and buying a number 10. So if you're going to do that, then you have that player to factor into this. I think he'd be the perfect fit there. I don't think he fits what Miami has talked about. Now, he's a local guy, and maybe Miami wasn't factoring in the opportunity to bring in a Jozy Altidore. If Miami, and they have the flexibility to do it, we know they have the designated player slots, if they decide that, you know what, we've said we're going to go get world superstars, and we're going to go get one, and now we can just put all of it into one because we're going to go acquire Jozy Altidore with allocation money that they have a boatload of. It'd be different. It'd be a pivot. It's not necessarily a bad one. I think you could sell it because of the local ties. I think you could make it work in your community. And if you then, instead of target these big-time number 9s, you can drop this ridiculous chase at this point, it sounds like, of Roger Martinez, and you can go get an elite-level winger. Okay. Then if you have the situation where, or an elite-level number 10, and you play Carranza on the wing. So Miami would be a pivot, and I don't know if they want to do that or if they want to go get 2 internationally known superstars as their designated players. Minnesota, to me, is the no-brainer. But are they going to have the wherewithal to make that deal? Are they going to go for it because this has fallen into their lap? And that's the hard part. You know, we've talked about strategy and building a squad all morning. This is where the best separate themselves, because you can build, you can plan, you can know what your depth chart looks like from here through 2023, but you didn't expect Jozy Altidore's mouth to have him on the outs in Toronto. And if you can get him at a price that you like, that's smart business. And maybe you have to adjust in midstream. But for a team like Minnesota, they could definitely use it. A team like Miami, they could definitely use it. Those are the two that jump out to me, and Minnesota's the one that is the no-brainer because I'm just really questioning this Luis Amarilla thing at this point. It's been talked about so long, and it hasn't gotten done. So, I don't know. We'll see. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back right after this with a special guest. Stay tuned.
Looking for future leaders we can trust and believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Georgia. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It begins by making their grades and being on time for practice. It includes learning to listen, following directions, accepting responsibility, being a good role model. And it's about respect for officials, opponents, the rules, and each other. The result? It transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. High school sports. There's so much more than just a game. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
Today's show is presented by Appolinsky & Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
You're listening to Soccer Down Here daily on SDH Networks, a division of OSG Sports. Find us at Soccer Down Here on Facebook and Twitter. The time is now the top of the hour. Peep, y'all.
Well, 4 years ago, when we started this little show called Soccer Down Here, we would have been done now There wouldn't be a rejoin. There wouldn't be a network ID because the show would have been over because we did 1 hour shows because we thought that's all people wanted. And that was, we were like, oh no, that's a lot. We'll never be able to get to everything in an hour. We'll never be able to we'll always be able to cover everything in an hour. It'll be easy. Well, then we'd have like 10 things on the list that we didn't get to cover. And when we started this, there was another guy who was on the show on a regular basis. Is he over there? I think I see him.
Yeah.
Hey, it's Jared Smith.
What do
He
you
got
know?
out of a bunker. Go figure.
What's
My
up?
phone works as well as John's now. This is a new world for everybody.
Frightening. We have maybe
This is the advancement
fewer,
in 4 years' time.
Yeah, we have maybe fewer technical difficulties, although we still have them, but maybe a few less.
Most of them associated with me.
Well,
We have fewer, but when we have them, they're amazing.
something like that. Well, happy birthday!
Yeah, happy birthday. 4
Happy
years. That's a
SDH
weird.
birthday.
That's a weird concept of 4 years' time, but here we are. And not a lot has changed, and a lot has changed at the same time. So I checked Twitter, and the complaints are still there. They're just louder.
They're very
a little bit
different.
more
More
diverse.
capital letters.
Yeah, it's
They're more
different.
diverse, but they're still there.
There's more, and honestly, at this point, 4 years ago, there had been maybe it's close to the same. Maybe there had been a week of training at this point, or they were starting their first week of training. I don't remember exactly, but it was a lot of excitement. There was very few complaints. There were a few because you were looking at a team at that point that would have started Kenwin Jones up top. There were a lot of questions about him and his background and his injury history and what he was going to have left. I don't think a certain player by the name of Joseph Martinez was even on the radar at this point.
Nope, don't think so.
I don't think so, because I think
don't
that was a
believe it
pretty quick
was.
turn when that rumor hit.
Yeah, I think we were still getting over the Oscar Romero
Yeah, I was going to say,
situation
is
with him
Sutcliffe
going
still
to
trying to
China.
make Fetch happen?
Yeah.
Well, the Chinese league made fetch happen because they gave Oscar Romero like twice as much as he was being offered here.
Yeah, that worked out nicely for Atlanta. Joseph came in, and if I remember correctly, Joseph just started hitting like diving headers in the game in Nashville, in
Chattanooga.
Chattanooga, excuse me, in the games in Charleston when you had the tournament. Then also everybody had a heart attack because Alec Can had a howler in the Charleston tournament, so everyone just freaked out thinking that this is all just going to go straight to hell, and started this kind of weird petty rivalry with Columbus. It was all magical. Again, some things haven't changed. Atlanta United then and now has an Irishman that no one's really sure about. This one's like 10 years
true.
younger, but hey,
It's a little bit of a throwback, huh?
it is. And he got out of Hearts. And that's great. Great
Yeah,
for him.
good for him.
Because that ship right now, there's more holes than ship.
Yeah. Yeah, Hearts is an absolute mess in Scotland right now, so Mulroney is excited to go to a functioning club at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's where it should be for him. Welcome your Dion Pereira replacement and the Chris McCann replacement in your hearts.
Yes, this is definitely true. All right, what's been the most surprising thing to you since we started doing this show, Jarrett?
Probably the feedback on it, and just, probably just the growth, and not even just us, not even like Mouths of the South who've existed, since Christ was wearing sandals, but just the spread of everything. It doesn't even have to just do with us, but it's all the other shows that have cropped up and kind of found their niche, that have come, that have gone, that have evolved. And just, I like that it did this with Atlanta, that you have different voices that you can listen to, you can agree with, you can disagree with, and you can go through all that. And I'm glad everybody latched onto it. And I hope we see more of it in the markets that are coming online, like more stuff from Nashville, eventually stuff from Charlotte. We've known and had conversations with the guys who were doing soccer and Sweet Tea since way back in the day, but just the continued growth of of people getting their voice out there, that you don't have to be a pundit on MLS.com or, I'm sorry, MLSsoccer.com. Excuse me.
Yeah, Major League Soccer.com.
Yes.
Yes, the American Dodgeball Association of America.
Yes.
But you don't have to be there. You don't have to be ESPN. You don't have to be Fox to get your voice out there. So I'm glad to see it all continue to evolve in different ways. And you don't have to love one way over the other, but I'm glad we've got these kind of options. Now, to the original point, when we were recording this stuff at like 10 p.m. on Thursday nights back in the Peachtree Post days.
Oh, you're going back to Peachtree Post.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Didn't think we'd end up doing, 2 hours, 5 days a week. Because, again, as you said, we didn't think there'd be enough content. But now there is. Especially when you got into silly season after the third year, where a lot of contracts were either going to be up or entering the auction years. Man, I think that was one of my biggest concerns as well, was are we going to have enough to talk about in the offseason with a team that, we're not really sure, especially the first year. I wasn't sure how much content there would be in the offseason because I wasn't sure how much we'd see coming in and out. Nah, there's plenty. There's more than enough. There's some days where
conversations come up multiple times, because when we started, it's like, well, man, everybody's doing a weekly podcast. Are we going to have enough to do every day? Are we going to have enough for 5 hours in a week to talk about? We found out that was a stupid way of thinking. Then we were like, well, man, 5 hours isn't enough. We need 10. So we started doing that like midway through 2017. And then, I specifically remember when we're going into the off season in 2017 before the 2018 season, it's like, well, maybe we'll take some time off. Maybe we'll do it's a weekly show for a while. Maybe we'll go back to an hour a day. There were all kinds of ideas, and it just kept going because of a certain young man from Independiente in Argentina.
Mm-hmm.
Man, the boat show was wild. I still remember vividly Villalba Watch and the absurdity and the fun that came with that. And man,
which one?
With Villalba Watch, when Tito was.
No, that was already done. That was Peachtree Post days.
Oh, I know it was. But I'm saying I remember
Peachtree Post.
No, it was Peachtree Post days, because that was also the time we were talking about, and I more than once referred to Seattle as a smoldering crater. They went on to win MLS Cup without getting a shot on goal. It was just. I mean, it's just. I know it was the Peachtree Post days, but it's one of those things that it was wild that it just kind of captured everything in a way that I didn't really expect. It's the same thing when you have the first ever game at Bobby Dodd, like, oh, didn't expect this. Where in terms of crowd, in terms of reaction, people before and after the game, all that jazz. And then, you get, the boat watch and the boat show coming to Atlanta that, man, causes all sorts of just absurd chaos. And plenty of content to talk about. Anytime the content started to slow down, the rest of the South would pick it up, whether it was USL, NPSL, PDL back in the day. There was always, God knows there was always enough to talk about and enough people to reach out to, Mississippi Bria, was it William Carey down in Mississippi where they had the tornadoes roll through. I mean, there was always something. So just the absurd amount of content that was available.
And
it's
still
been crazy.
is.
John, what about you? What's been the most surprising thing since we started doing this 4 years ago?
Well, I mean, surprising. Yeah, I think it went how quickly things escalated, because I think in the back of our minds we had this idea that we would be going for more than an hour. We just didn't know it was going to be happening that quickly. And then the consistency of it and the growth of it, and this is where I sit there and tip my hat to everybody who listens on a daily basis, who checks in on a daily basis, who gives us shout outs on a daily basis, always asking us questions about what's going on in their minds, and the consistency that folks are always curious, and the consistency of the growth that's been going on, being able to cover things from the absolute beginning because of how we've been able to see what's been going on in a place like Statesboro and where they are right now and that kind of growth. But just really how quickly things jumped off the page and how they continue to jump off the page for me. And that's the the fun part of all of this is the discovery and the growth and where it continues to grow, and knowing that it can go in a bunch of different directions, but where's it going to go next? I think the anticipation for me has always been that next step and trying to figure out, okay, what's the next page of the story? That for me is the fun part.
The most surprising thing for me easily is people want Soccer Down Here gear.
Yeah.
I would have never expected that kind of stuff, that people want to have a scarf, have a mug, have a hat, and represent what we do outside of just listening. It's blown my mind.
And when you have people wandering around in the Southeast with the scarf, or when you can go into the clubhouse in Statesboro and you see a Soccer Down Here scarf that's a part of the deal and a part of their interior decorating, and when you wander around and people want to come up and shake your hand and they tell you how much they enjoy what we're doing and how they listen every day. When people sit there and it's like, yeah, I want a T-shirt, I want a golf shirt, and yes, Patrick, we have the golf shirt. We have the golf shirt for you. We just have to figure out if you want gray or black. But yeah, the 2020 black or the 2019 gray, Patrick, that's up to you. So, but yeah, just people want to sit there and they want to support the show in all the ways that they are. It's very, very humbling to see all this come across the page.
Yeah, the number one thing for me was walking through the Gulch. It was late last season, and somebody was walking by and just turned their phone around. They were listening to
Yes.
Soccer Down Here, that day's show,
Yes.
like walking back to the tailgate. I'm like, wow, okay, this is nuts. I'm right here, but you're listening to me from a few hours ago. Okay, this is strange. It's been crazy
that way.
It's been nuts.
Timing plays a lot of role in this too for me.
Yeah.
Where we picked a damn good time to kick everything off, and the rest of the South picked a damn good time to do a lot of weird stuff too. Where you have Atlanta do its thing, you have Nashville making its push. Now you have Charlotte making their push. You have the Courage come down and put together for what was a time. I mean, look, that was the best women's team in the world. They went and proved that. Then you have what Tormenta has done. You had now two clubs in Chattanooga with the bit of drama that went on there, to call it lightly. You had the growth out in Little Rock with the Rangers, Mississippi Bria. We had a team sponsored by a liquor store make a run into the U.S. Open Cup and score a goal on DC United on a berm, basically. A lot of really fun things happened in the South in soccer, and it really timed up nicely with getting online. So it's been fun to watch all that, and it certainly helped that everything just kind of synced up perfectly.
Don't forget Mystery Soccer Theater 3000.
Oh, God. Yeah, there's that. God bless you, Asheville. Just stay weird. Always stay weird. Not that you know any other way.
That's what's nuts. Since we started doing this, you've had Tormenta launch and do a pro team. You've had Greenville Triumph. You've had Chattanooga now with two professional teams, and they didn't have any when we started this 4 years ago with Chattanooga FC.
Shout out to Greenville for also damn near winning a trophy this year, too. Coming online and damn near won a trophy.
Yep. We've always had great support from the Charleston Battery. You've got teams in Birmingham and Memphis now. I mean, Nashville, I'm trying to remember when we started, if Nashville was still an NPSL team going into 2017. I think they were. I don't even know if the USL stuff had been announced yet. No, it wasn't Inter Nashville. There was a separate team that became Nashville SC. It was Nashville FC. And I think 2017 was their last NPSL season before everything moved into 2018. Charlotte, we've talked to ownership groups that were trying to bring MLS that don't exist anymore. So it's been nuts just from that end of it to go from this day in 2017 where Atlanta United hadn't played a game yet. There was a ton of excitement, but there were still a ton of questions, to now having, three teams that are announced. One will play here in just over a month, their first MLS game. One is next year, within a 4.5 hour drive of Atlanta. not even getting into USL Championship, USL League One, NISA, the growth of USL League Two, the growth of the NPSL, all of it has just exploded in the last 4 years.
And don't forget the two out of the last 3 years, the champion of USL Championship, came out of the South. We're going to claim Louisville for a minute here.
We're going to claim Louisville.
Yeah, we can claim Louisville. That's fine.
Yeah, Brad Estes is a friend of the show.
I liked what James O'Connor did up there. And then he left, and then they still won a title without him.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing.
Mm-hmm.
He left halfway through it'd be kind of like if Red Bulls, if Jesse Marsh, when he left, if Chris Armas hadn't blown it, and they won the cup in 2018 instead, it'd be kind of like that. Where we got this coach
now
that
hold
we really
on.
like.
I'm going to cut you off for a second because I'm going to have a serious issue with something that you said, because you're not the only one who said it, but this has really bugged me. Chris Armas didn't blow it. He didn't blow anything. He made a bad tactical decision, but by saying he blew it, you're saying that that Atlanta United shouldn't have beaten the Red Bulls that year. I completely and utterly disagree with you.
At this point, it's canon, so I just kind of roll with it.
But that's the thing. It's canon diminishing the team. And I don't think that's fair or correct. I really disagree with the sentiment.
The amazing part of that series is that if Joseph puts in that goal in the first 25 seconds in Red Bulls in the second leg, I'm not sure that game doesn't just roll downhill on Red Bulls and bury them under 8 feet of snow.
Maybe it wasn't. I don't think it was snowing. It was really cold, but it wasn't that bad.
Yeah, but I mean, it was just when it was already 3-0, and yeah, it is one of those things where Armas made a bad decision. Then Atlanta just came out and buried them, and then he went for it at the end and did the. I think we talked about this last year. He did the thing that you did in Monterey, where just shut up shop and go home down 2-0 and try and turn it around up there. Instead, he went for it, gave up the third to Tito Villalba for one of the biggest goals, for my money, one of the biggest goals in club history, where he just left Luis Robles rooted to the spot where Robles was just hoping the post was about 4 feet shorter than it was. But man, if Joseph puts in that first goal inside of 20 seconds in New York, I still wonder to this day if that game just doesn't turn into, Atlanta scored 4 goals on Red Bulls up in New York and won the whole damn thing like 7-1 on aggregate. Because I wonder at that moment if that would have absolutely broken them.
But no, I that's maybe one of the things that if that's canon, that's one of the things that drives me nuts, because it's coming at it from this, Atlanta shouldn't have won. And no, that's not the case. Chris Armas made a bad tactical move. I don't even remember, and I have to go back and watch that again. I don't think he necessarily went for it at the end, but he definitely didn't close things down at 2-0 down like he should have.
I want to say he brought on Etienne.
He might have. I don't remember well. I thought it was just more of he looked like a deer in the headlights.
See, and for me, both things can be true in that I think if we're going to go down this road, hell yeah. I think he absolutely did in the tactical decision. I just vividly remember watching that game on the kickoff where Bradley Wright Phillips is pulling the Red Bulls back and setting the line of confrontation at midfield. And everybody just kind of goes, oh, this is weird, in that he didn't stick with what worked. I think you can blame him for that and absolutely give him crap. And at the same time say that, Atlanta saw what they were given, smelled blood in the water, and then just ripped the carcass apart for 90 minutes.
But it's just, for me, it's the standard thing of, Atlanta, needed help. And I disagree with that. I really do. Help. No, I mean, Chris Armas gave them some help. That team,
that's my stance on it. Chris Armas blew it and handed Atlanta a loaded weapon when Atlanta really didn't need a loaded weapon. They were happy to do it with their hands.
It's like, here, I'll hold the M80. Here, I'll give you the lighter.
Nah, I'm still
got some more ammo for you if you need it, Atlanta.
It's the thing that's out there that drives me the craziest. It really does. So don't ever get me a Chris Armas blew it T-shirt.
No. Daniel Price, by the way, is commenting.
I'll get you one with a picture of Tito celebrating that goal, crying onto somebody's shoulder.
No, give me something about Tito doing something great as opposed to Chris Armas blew it. I'll take
holding up the trophy, where Tito's holding up the trophy.
Game. I don't need that.
Yeah, they lost.
I don't need that.
It was an infuriating game.
Yes.
But Daniel Price comes in this morning, and he's complimenting you, Jared, about how you sound great, and he doesn't want to gouge his ears out.
Yes, he's not torturing cats today. It's good.
Yeah, no, I'm taking a nice walk on a peaceful walkway, and it's raining. It's very nice. It's actually very northwest right now.
It's funny how somehow Jarrett has passed John in the bad audio category.
Yeah, bad audio expectation category, I think, would be a good way to describe it. Because the audio quality is fine right now. The expectation is the problem.
Yes, that's the problem. I mean, you both have expectations of shenanigans, definitely.
We are the Vancouver Whitecaps of podcasting audio.
Yeah, that's about right.
Well, the only thing missing today would be Rusty figuring out how to dial into the bridge.
No, not that clown.
Don't put that evil on me.
Seriously.
Yeah, that was also back in the dark days when people could just board the show like it was a ship passing by.
Uh-huh.
You'd just turn around and somebody had crawled up on deck.
Yeah.
Oh, hi.
Yeah, those were scary days, especially when John would just keep answering the phone. Just,
First one was
have
funny.
everything open.
Somebody's calling. I'm going to answer it. Oh,
yes.
They've called 3 times and they've hung up and said stupid things. But okay, I'm gonna answer it again.
Uh-huh. You sit there and you're treating someone as a legitimate phone call, and then it's just like, okay, all right, fine. After the third one, you're like, basically.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
How many sounders have we gone through in 4 years?
Well, we got them back now. I had to rearrange some things and make it work. But yeah, we've went through a few. We've had a few special ones.
Yeah. The woo siren.
There you go.
The woo siren when there was barking news. I'm assuming you're just hitting these off and you don't actually have breaking news that I'm interrupting.
No. I'm just.
He's sampling. He's sampling the board.
But then we have the my favorite new one.
I don't think you have the facilities for that, big man.
It's the best.
Just put it on repeat.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that you can actually get that, and we see people wearing that on a T-shirt these days.
Yes.
Go to teespring.com and you can get your own on KK's T-shirt.
Yes, you can.
This is the weirdest timeline that I'm in.
Pretty much. That's what happens.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and we also have time left until the end of the transfer window, so this timeline's going to get dumber. And
the transfer window don't close till early May. So,
There's a gas leak here, and nobody really knows where it is, nor do they want to go try and fix it.
It's going to get hectic. So before you go, Jarrett, let me ask you this. What is your biggest concern about Atlanta United in 2020, since everybody's freaking out?
I guess the generic answer is to say the eight position, because, I like that we left 6 watch. I guess it was 8 watch back in the day. Or no, it was 6 watch.
It was 6 watch.
And then, which was always weird to me because it was Carmona who left, and Carmona played the 8 in that system. And Jeff is still here. Jeff's like an angry 36-year-old man who's just had it with these kids. And you still
get out of my yard 6.
Yeah, pretty much. He is. If you hit the ball into his yard, he's going to pop it and put it in his garage. But I guess if you want to have the question about the 8, again, though the window's so damn open, I don't think they're done with stuff. I have nothing to back that up other than speculation, but I don't think they're done with stuff in terms of bringing guys in. But at the same time, you have a Heineman who, man, despite I kind of feel bad for Emerson Heineman because he's going to be eternally measured against Darlington Nagbe when they're not the same kind of player. You have Eric Rometti who, was a rock when he was on in the playoffs a couple years ago. He basically made New York City's attack disappear for 180 minutes. And and he can play the 6 like he did at Bonfield by himself. He can play the 8 like he did kind of against Orlando last year in U.S. Open Cup, where he goes down there and just absolutely rips Orlando apart. I think you've got depth, and I think if you want to go out and get that big 8, I think it doesn't put you in good shape. It puts you in great shape because you've got those guys already here who can step in and do the job. And I think you're in fine shape now. I think you go into damn scary shape if you go get that big 8, if you go get a TAM signing 8. We'll see, because I think, especially with the depth you're going to have, with the Heinemans, with the Lennons, with the Remettis of the world, with Jeff Lorenowitz getting time when he gets time, you still have Mo Adams on this roster who, I mean, you really want to put it past Mo Adams to jump on the field and do something again? Because
I'm not. I think Adams could be a huge surprise this year.
If y'all didn't watch him in the 2s last year, he showed more in the 2s than I ever expected to see. And I get it. USL is a different level than MLS. I absolutely get it. But he showed more in terms of on the ball and what he was capable of in terms of, I think, leadership in the moment and what he did on the field. Damn impressive. If Mo Adams comes out of the gate and you end up with kind of, I know it's kind of weird to say like a ball-playing destroyer, but if you want to put Mo Adams back there to be a bully at times, I think it can work. And I think that can be just a really good, a stupid good trade that you made that might take a year to pay off. But after what he showed last year, I'm not writing off Mo Adams yet. And I think if you want to contribute that to depth, then I think you're in a really good shape depth-wise as you're bringing guys in who have different levels of experience and, bring different skill sets into everything.
Yeah, it's two things. I think you have the depth, but you also have the competition for playing time. And there's no spot outside of Joseph that is 100% guaranteed in that role because there's always options. Pitti, Barco are going to be pushed. Villalba's pushing for time. You've got the central midfield options that you have currently with the expectation of adding more to it. You've got all kinds of different ways you can play the back line based off current form, based off the opponent, based off potential injury. You've got all kinds of different options. It's a good spot to be in. So I think this team's going to be positioned well. And I'm going to throw this at you, Jarrett, before I send you off. So Lewis Martin reminded us of, this was Peachtree Post days, but the trade window after MLS Cup in 2016.
Yes.
That show. Didn't we do like 3 hours?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was 3 hours straight. And we knew all the moves that were going to happen, basically.
Pretty much.
You just kind of had to wait for them. There were a couple surprises, but nothing groundbreaking. Potential Atlanta United legend Sean Johnson comes to town, probably doesn't even have time to get off the airplane. Just turns around and goes to New York City.
The airplane was rerouted, I think.
Yeah, that was a weird window. That was a weird 3 hours. I'm not sure I was lucid for the entire show, to be honest.
Lewis
about an hour and a half
kind of
in,
like
I was
the Al Capone's vault show.
Yeah, it was. It was so exciting, and then there wasn't really anything in there except me staring at the door for the last hour and a half, wondering how easy would it be for me to get out this door. But
pretty much.
That's fine. But to your point about depth, you've also got a guy like Brooks Lennon, who's a youth national team guy who's shown talent. Who, man, I don't know when he's getting on the field. I don't know. He's going to have to go up against the likes of Tito and the likes of a Franco Escobar, depending on how you line up for minutes.
In a 4-3-3, yeah.
Somebody's going to have to sit, unless you want to play him wing back in like a 3-5-2 or a 3-4-3.
And you could do that, and then you could get maybe all of them on the field, but then it's a little bit harder for Villalba to get on the field. So it's going to be fun to watch. There's still plenty of different ways this thing can stack up, but you should probably go back to work now, shouldn't you?
Yeah, probably put Marco at the 10, or play PT out wide. Play PT out wide to the left and play Villalba out right to the wide on a 3-4-3 up top next to Joseph.
Then you have no defense.
Who needs defense? Ask DC United what defense is.
I'll see what they do. I want to see how they get everybody on the field.
They're going to do what I suggested to Tata back in the day, which is I asked him if he could put a 12th man on the field. He said as long as they keep adding referees onto the field and onto the sideline, he's going to keep asking for a 12th player.
Yeah, it's fair enough.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's going to work, but it's a fair idea.
Who cares?
Go back to work before you get fired.
Fair enough.
Thanks, Jarrett.
Bye.
See y'all.
We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yep, he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service, Ad Council, and your state forester.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
This is what matters. This is beyond X's and O's. This is the difference mutual respect makes. This is what character looks like. This is what defines us in Georgia. This is sportsmanship. School sports. It's not the outcome that matters most, but the way the games are played. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinsky of Apolinsky and Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
Welcome back. Soccer Down here, January 23rd. 4 years ago, we started doing this thing. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Lots of news today to talk about real quick before we finish up with the timeline. Sporting Kansas City, I think it is safe to expect that their number 10 that has been rumored, 25-year-old Israeli Gadi Kinda, is going to be signed because there have been people taking pictures of the stadium's digital boards with "Welcome Gadi Kinda." So I would probably think it's going to happen.
Safe assumption.
What's that?
Safe assumption, yes.
Yeah, I think so. It's been a youth international for Israel. He has not earned a senior national team cap yet. He's currently at Beitar Jerusalem, developed at another club. He's only been there for a year. Don't know what the terms are going to be, but you would expect that gets announced probably any time now. Reports out of Africa have Orgia Kwankwo, who was in Montreal last year, was 8-goal scorer, team MVP, coming back from Bologna. Now, he was on loan last year. Don't know if this is going to be another loan deal or a permanent move, but I remember these quotes from Kwankwo at the final media session of the year. He said, "It's been a difficult season, trust me. I've never experienced something like this in my life. This is the first time. When you travel 5 hours, 3 hours to play a game and all that, it's been very difficult. I cannot adapt to it."
Huh.
Well, he's going to have to try to adapt to it because he's going to be back in Montreal, according to reports. That's coming from African soccer expert Ridwan Asante out of Ghana. So stay tuned on that one. I don't think he's played at Bologna since he went back, so he's got to find playing time somewhere. And if that means he has to adapt to long flights, then that's where you're at. If you did not see the coverage last night of the massive crowd at LAX as Chicharito arrived, it was nuts. He's going to train today for the first time with the squad and then have a press conference this afternoon. So be on the lookout for that. Other news around MLS, San Jose has a jersey sponsorship now. Intermedia is the company. Finally, it was always kind of a bad look when you have teams in the league without a jersey sponsorship, and then you have some teams with really big, lucrative ones. Kind of like, guys, can you find somebody? And San Jose finally has. Seattle has got a couple things on the board. So they played their first preseason game. It was closed-door scrimmage with Peñarol of Uruguay. They lost 1-0. They played 27 players, so, I mean, you're not really worried about results here. Maybe the biggest surprise is Shane O'Neill at center back paired up with Gustav Svensson. We've talked about that. One reason why is you didn't see Xavier Arriaga, and I don't know if there was an injury or fitness or what, but Arriaga and O'Neill are the only two center backs they have right now. Well, it sounds like they've got one coming, according to Unión de Santa Fe in Argentina. 27-year-old Yeimar Gomez Andrade is headed to Seattle, according to the Argentine club. Seattle hasn't announced it yet, but this is how these things go quite often. 27 years old, 6'2", Colombian, 6'2", 203 pounds. Pretty good-sized guy there. He has played pretty much his whole career in Argentina. Moved to Rosario Central as a youth player in 2010. He was there through 2016. Spent some time at Arsenal de Sarandi and Independiente Rivadavia, not Independiente in Buenos Aires that Barco came from, smaller club. Moved to Unión in August of 2017. 66 appearances across all competitions. So a veteran of the Argentine league. Should be a good signing, should be a guy that could pair up pretty well with Arriaga, and O'Neill becomes the reserve, and then you can keep Svensson in the midfield if you need to, which strengthens that side of it. Seattle had been linked to defensive midfielders. Now it sounds like they're going to go center back and keep Svensson in the midfield. I think that's the better way. So they still need more depth. That's only 3 center backs, and if you add Svensson, it's only 4 guys who can play at center back. You'd probably like to have at least one more, and we'll see what they do with that. But progress for the Sounders.
Yes, that's the word to use. As long as they're still moving forward and getting progress.
I want to give you this quote from Diego Alonso, manager of Miami. He gave his first press conference yesterday. It's a great quote talking about just his life and his coaching philosophy. He said, "True dreamers never simply meet their dreams. They surpass them. I am from Uruguay. I have been raised to always fight for what I want. Growing up, I was always told that countries like Brazil and Argentina were superior and that as Uruguayans, we could not beat them. But if you notice, I believe Brazil has 9 Copa America titles, Argentina has 14 of them, and Uruguay has 15. So that is the mentality I identify with." And then when he went on to talk about the way he wants his team to play, our team must impose an idea of play and not react to one. This is what you're starting to hear more of from managers who are getting away from being rigid in, we are a pressing team, we are a possession team. It's about, we have to control the match. And if we control it through pressing, if we control it through possession, if one day we control it through possession and the next day we control it through pressing, it's about control. Imposing your idea of play, not reacting to what the other team does. And Alonso is that kind of manager. I want to see what pieces he's got. I think he's going to have really good pieces to work with. They're just not all there yet. But I think he'll make the most out of what he has in Miami. I think it's a good hire, even if it's not necessarily the one that they had in mind originally. No,
and I love the quotes. I love how he's coming out firing in the press conference with all of the gung-ho stuff that he's putting out there about dreams and attitude and approach and all this kind of stuff. Love the early stuff that we're hearing from Diego Alonso.
All right, what else do we have on the Twitters?
Okay, continuing the thought from Kefsi from hour number 1 after Jozy. Also, something called, and this is in quotes, MLS soccer staff writes, it looks like Kwadwo Poku is training with trialing with the Rapids. Any idea if there's enough room for him to make appearances, even if signed?
I don't think he's an MLS level player, and it's not a knock. I think he's a good player, but I don't think he is tactically astute enough. I think he's too one-dimensional. But when you look at Colorado, depending on how they see him, maybe. And I haven't watched his evolution up front in the last couple of years. Could he become an 8? I don't think he can. The times I've seen him put in that role, he struggled. If he can, there's a place for him in Colorado. Because the Rapids right now, backline looks pretty good. Wingers, they've got Benezet, they've got Shinya Shiki, they've got Nicholson, they've got Lewis. Good. You're only going to play 2 of them. You got 4 that can play. You're good. Up top, you got Kai Kamara, you got Diego Rubio, you got Nicky Jackson. You're good. Number 10, you added Eunice Nomley. You have Nicholas Mesquita. You have Cole Bassett, young player. Good. Holding midfield, you got Kellen Acosta, you got Jack Price. That's it. And this is something I think we got to get used to here. Kwadwo Poku, coming from Tampa Bay, would not be coming in to start in an MLS team. Probably not any MLS team. Could he come in and make the squad? Yep. And I think he could be an impact player off the bench. But I think for Colorado, his role would be more as an 8. And I don't know if defensively he's strong enough there. If they didn't have so many options as the 10, I would say it's a good fit for him, because I think even if he's not necessarily a playmaker, that's the role. You need to have guys behind him to let Poku just bomb forward and do what he does. When you give him defensive responsibilities, I don't think he's nearly as strong. And Colorado, that would seem to be the role that would be there for him. So I don't know if it's a good fit, but I don't think they would be looking at him as a guy playing significant minutes either at all.
ATL UTD fan 1 linked to the NBC Sports Soccer story where Chicharito was seen telling his father that a move to MLS is, quote, the beginning of my retirement, end quote.
Hold on. If you want to take things out of context, you can, and a lot of people have. He was talking about the retirement of his European dream, and when you get the full context of it, and you get past direct translation too, it was about the mental element of Chicharito deciding to give up on playing in Europe. That doesn't mean the start, literally, of his retirement. That means Europe is at a higher level than MLS and Mexico. I don't think anybody's going to argue that. And the places that Chicharito has been in Europe is at a different level. And he is leaving that. He's saying, I'm not going to go back. At his age, once he comes back to North America, could he go back and play in Mexico? Absolutely. I think it would be great if he went and finished his career at Chivas in a few years. But I think a lot of people jumped on direct translation and cut off the whole conversation and missed the point of that. And that's kind of disappointing that NBC Soccer would do that the way that they did. But they're also not an MLS rights holder, so I'm not surprised.
There's the clip where you just see that soundbite. There's a 2-minute section that I would recommend people watch in its entirety, where he's having this conversation with his mother and father, and it goes over the retirement of his European dream. So I would try and find that 2-minute segment that adds a lot more context and is not what NBC Sports Soccer did with the headline.
Yeah, that's extremely disappointing that would come out the way that it did. And this is the stuff that drives me crazy at times with soccer in this country. Nobody benefits from crapping on that move. Nobody. What does NBC Sports benefit from by throwing shade on this move? This is a huge move, and it's a big deal, and he's 31 years old. How many 31-year-olds now are we putting at retirement age in soccer, in international soccer? And NBC Soccer knows better than that. And no, it has nothing to do with their Premier League coverage, because you're talking about different editorial, you're talking about different sections, but it's extremely disappointing when you see this stuff. And it doesn't make NBC's coverage of the Premier League or soccer as a whole look better by doing this. It doesn't make any other soccer product in the country look better when you throw shade on things like this. It doesn't. And even beyond throwing shade, my incredible frustration is where you're going to take things out of context to manufacture shade. That's a huge problem for me. It doesn't do anything to grow the game. And you're not hiding anything. You're actually reporting on it in the proper way. There's a whole lot of context to that pretty moving piece that Chicharito posted about a career and about all of the different steps in the career. You've seen these types of conversations with players who have gone back to England, who went and played on the continent, and that time ended and they go back to England. You've seen it with Spanish players who go back to play in Spain at the end of their career. You've seen it with every country. You've seen it with Argentines who go back and play in the Superliga at the end of their career, usually at 35, 34, 36. This is different, and this is really unique because he's not going back to Chivas, his original club. He's not going back to Mexico. He's coming into the United States as an icon. He's coming into the United States as a massive star. And I just have never understood the shade that people have thrown at Chicharito in general. If you don't like Mexico, if you don't like El Tri, that's fine. That's on you. But to disrespect him as a player, I'm sorry, you're not paying any attention. And then to use this, where this is a glimpse of a professional athlete's life that you don't ordinarily get to see.
No.
And he didn't try to make it manufactured for sponsors or manufactured for PR. It's blood and guts. It's him spilling his guts, talking to his parents about he wanted to go to Europe and be the biggest player in the world, and he didn't necessarily get that opportunity. And now it's time for him to take on a new adventure. It's the retirement of his European dream, his European career, not his retirement. That's the unique thing about this sport, is you do get eras and phases of careers where players will have these opportunities. And is this different than playing in La Liga? Yeah, it is. Are there things about it that are going to be better and more exciting? Yeah. I mean, when he goes into some of these stadiums and the place goes insane, the reaction he got at the airport last night, I think it was overwhelming for him a little bit. I don't think he expected it to be like that. It's not this huge negative that people want to try to portray it because they have issues with MLS. And that's, go and look at the people who are negative about this. Go see what they have to say about MLS, and I think you'll find a very common thread. And it's a huge issue for me that NBC on their soccer outlet would allow that type of editorial crap to get into this and try to throw shade at a guy who's bearing his soul in this video. That's wrong.
Ricky Ricardo with a couple of twos questions this morning.
Yep.
Which first-team players do you see truly splitting time, not just a spot start, between the first team and the twos?
Let's see. Well, we'll see what kind of deal Nielsen signs if he earns the contract. I could see him doing that. I could see George Campbell doing that. I think most of his time will come with the twos. I could see Mulroney see some time with the twos. Maybe Adam John here and there, but not often. I think it'll be more about keeping him fresh in those weeks where the twos have a game and maybe the first team doesn't. He might get a start with the twos. I think that's maybe it. I would be surprised if Bello sees much of any time with the twos. I wouldn't expect Anton Walks to see time there, again, unless it becomes a situation where he hasn't played in a while and he needs a game. Luis Fernando could still see some time with the twos because I think he's further down on the depth chart with the first team, and you want to keep him fresh and keep him developing. So those are the ones that jump out to me.
Follow-up. What are your thoughts on the players that Atlanta United 2 have brought in so far?
It's different. I think you've got a variety of guys. I think bringing in guys with maybe a little more experience in some ways is a good thing. I think it helps. I think having that blend in with your academy guys who will come up. You know, we talked to Stephen Glass at Media Day, the first day of first team training, and something that stood out to me that he said was, you know, he came in and was hired, I want to say a little bit later than this last year. He didn't get to really build the squad. And there were guys who were on 2-year deals and guys that, you know, he didn't go out and recruit and identify and bring in. And when you get the opportunity now, as last year was closing down, coming into this year, to plan and know what you've got coming through the academy, know who those guys are who need time, but then to figure out how to supplement that. That's been really interesting. And it's been interesting to see some guys with local ties. And the one that we see yesterday, Madhu Jadama, a player with a ton of USL Championship experience. He's still young at 25. A couple games with the Timbers during his time there, mostly with Timbers too. But he comes in as a guy that can help George Campbell, a guy that can help Patrick Nielsen, a guy that can help Garrison Tubbs, a guy that knows this league and can make this team more competitive. And I think that's the biggest jump. And it took probably half the season last year to get there, was going from the twos being a place for people to get minutes to the twos having their own competitive goals, while not losing the fact that it is a place for guys to get minutes. You're not going to sacrifice development for competition. Like, you're not going to say, oh, man, we really need to win this game. Well, let's pull Mo Adams down from being on the 18 with the first team and have him start this game because it's a big game. You're not going to do that. You're not going to sacrifice anything from the first team for the twos to win a game. It's all about development. But you bring in Jadama, you bring in Philip Goodrum, who was a third-round pick in the Super Draft, UNC Wilmington, a forward. You bring him in, you see what you can get from him. You see what you can get from Daniel Steedman, which is a really interesting one to me. Steedman's the one that I want to see in action because you're talking about a player who decided to leave college early and a player who has been in the USL level before, spent some time as an academy player with the Charlotte Independents. So 19 years old, deciding to leave college and come into the pro game, he gets a chance to develop. And that's interesting to me. That's really interesting. I want to see what he can turn into because I don't think he makes the decision if he doesn't think he can make it, and I don't think the club brings him in if they don't think he has that potential progression opportunity in front of him.
Elliot Beaven this morning wanted to know what Jake Mulroney can do on the field that Dion cannot.
Play as a fullback and run faster. It sounds simple, but he's a faster player. I don't think he's quite as good on the dribble. Dion Pereira was an excellent 1v1 player, but Pereira really only played on the left wing. I think he played a game or two as a wing back, but defensively was an issue. Mulroney will give you that ability because he's played a good bit of fullback in his career. So he's got the wing-back ability. He can give you time on both sides in a four-man back line, and he can give you time on both sides in a 4-3-3. So a little more versatility, a little more pace, better defense.
We've had some comments. Peachtree Post forever this morning on the timeline.
Well, who said that?
Give me a second.
Your commenting is sometimes strange.
Ricky Ricardo. Peachtree Post forever. And Daniel Price this morning, contrary to popular belief, I think Atlanta's roster as it stands right now is pretty good. Our attack is solid. Question on the defense as they're untested in Atlanta kits, but I feel confident in our line. I think we'll be fine. #overreaction Thursday.
I think this team has more depth and more versatility than people are giving it credit for.
Yeah.
Meza is the biggest unknown because you haven't seen him in an Atlanta United kit. You've seen Bello, although you haven't seen him a ton. Castillo, you kind of know what you're getting with Edgar Castillo. He's a veteran. He's got time in Mexico, but he had a great 2018. He had an injury that ended his 2019 a little bit earlier than you would have thought. He's still a competitive player in this league, but you know what you get out of Miles Robinson, and you would think that he can get even better. You know what you get out of Franco Escobar. Brooks Lennon, can he give you time at right back? Does that mean you could play Escobar centrally too? I mean, could you see a scenario, and I was trying to think of the different permutations that you could see with this group. We've talked about if they wanted to open up and be super ultra attacking. Let's say they want to close a game out. You could see a back line of a line of 5, Castillo, Robinson, Lorenowitz, Escobar, Lennon as the wing back, with Meza as the 6. You could move into that. You could flip-flop Meza and Lorenowitz if you want. You can move a lot of those pieces around. You could get very defensive if you need to. That's what's so interesting about this group to me is not even with making a bunch of subs, you can change the personality of the group. And it's something that Frank de Boer has talked about many times. He wants a team that can adapt to the match state. If the team needs to go chase a game, they can push forward more. They can keep their shape. They can keep their way of playing, but they can commit more numbers forward. Players can adjust their positioning. Players can adjust if they need to close a game out or if they're under a ton of pressure. If it's a wave in the match where the other team is kind of overrunning you a bit, you don't have to make a sub to fix it. The team has that collective, intelligence as a group to make the adjustments as needed. And does that mean dropping into a line of 5 from time to time? Does that mean your number 6 if you're playing a 4-3-3? Does that mean your number 6, whether it's Lorenowitz or if Meza gets into that role at times? They drop into the back line, give you 3 center backs, you convert to a line of 5. You go from a 4-3-3 to a 5-4-1 or a 5-3-2. You've got the flexibility with the players in this group to do that. And that adds a completely different element. And I think it's something we saw de Boer start working towards last year. And it's something that gives you a bit of a secret weapon because then it's very difficult for opponents to prepare for you. And they have to prepare for all those different possibilities. They see the list of 11 players, and they're like, well, is this a 3-5-2 or a 4-3-3, or is it defensive, or is it attacking, or are they going to press us, or are they going to sit back and counter us? What are we gonna do here? That's a good place to be.
Jeremy York, morning, sirs.
Morning.
As a big fan of LGP, Gressel, and Can, which current Atlanta player should I gravitate to similar to the styles of those 3? Also, at this rate, should we book a U-Haul for Can too? Joking, of course. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, why is everybody trying to get rid of Alec Can? When did that happen? He re-signed. I'm confused. For LGP, I mean, the question is Meza's the obvious replacement, but I think he's a little bit different kind of player. I don't think he's quite as reckless. I don't think he's quite as demonstrative. I think he's a little bit smoother. I think he's a player who maybe reads the game a little bit better, and that's a nice spot to be in. I think he's going to intercept more plays than he's going to win tackles. He's going to intercept more passes than he's going to get stuck into a tackle. So he's going to be different. I don't know if there's going to be a personality of a player like LGP in this group. Personality-wise, maybe that becomes a player like an Eric Remedi, who is that feisty one that will get stuck in when the time calls for it. For Gressel, I mean, again, Brooks Lennon is kind of the player replacing that spot, but I don't know if that spot's going to really be used as much this year. I think it's going to be more 4-3-3. I don't think you're going to see as much wing-back play. So Lennon's a different kind of player, too. I don't think there's a direct replacement for Gressel who just gives you what Gressel did. I think everybody that gives you the crossing element maybe does it differently and does other things. Like Lennon's going to drive into the final third more. Lennon is a better dribbler, more speed. So he's not going to always look for that early cross. He's going to look to get in behind where he can. Escobar, we've seen him put in the early cross. We've seen him put in quality crosses, but we know what he gives you defensively that Gressel really struggled to. So those two players, you don't have exact like-for-like players in this squad. You have guys that are going to replace them and do it in a different way. And that's been the number one thing I've said about Nagbe is the hashtag Nagbe replacement might not be one person. It might not be exactly a player replacing. It might be a different way of playing that replaces him. And I think that's going to be the same for LGP, although center back is kind of center back. It kind of is what it is, but Meza approaches it differently. The right side, I think, is going to look very different. I just don't think you're going to see as much 3-5-2, 3-4-3 play. I think it's going to be more 4-3-3. And even in the 3-4-3, the role's different than Gressel at his best in the 3-5-2, where he's pretty freed up from defensive responsibilities. It's all about putting in that cross from the spot that he puts it in the best. He can do more than that, but that's when he is at his absolute most impactful. I don't think you're going to play in that way as much as you did in the second half of last season.
And the last comment/question from the board this morning. Tafka wants a USL League One club in Columbia, South Carolina so bad. Can we collectively think this into existence? And he's
if you
shouting
can
out to all of the
think money into my bank account to pay the expansion fee, sure.
Yeah.
But I don't have. If somebody can do that, it would be wonderful, and I'll put
Yes.
some of it towards an expansion fee, sure. But if you want to think some money into somebody's account to do it, then let's do it. Come on.
And Tafka's also reached out to the other local teams in the area, the Fireflies, Soda City, and the Bantams. Get on this, please.
It's cost. I mean, it's a big jump from League 2 to League 1. It takes a good bit of resources, and these clubs might be building in that direction. We know that Asheville City has made the move from NPSL to League 2, and the idea is ultimately to be in League 1. The idea for them to go professional, they want to go that route. They didn't want to wait and see what NPSL wanted to do. They didn't want to do NISA or any of that. They wanted to follow the USL route, but it's going to take time for them. And I don't know personally where the Columbia clubs are in terms of League 2, NPSL, UPSL, and their ability to bring the resources together to operate a club that is going to have a budget of probably $1.5 to $3 million. It's not cheap.
We are officially caught up, sir. What else is on your mind?
I believe that is it. I was looking to see if any news wanted to break right as we were finishing up.
Oh, we do have a little bit of news ourselves.
Okay. What is our news?
We can add a fifth game to our regular season rundown.
Well, we added a bunch yesterday. Why don't you run through that first?
All right, so here's what we have. Our regular season debut, Norcross.
Hold on. Let's start with making sure that people know what regular season we're talking about.
Yes. The GHSA soccer season, regular season for high school soccer here in the state of Georgia.
There we go. That's what I was looking
for. We have a schedule, and we are piecing together. We have dates, and we're putting games on the schedules, and we're getting some great feedback from folks who are letting us know about games and rivalries and things like that. But we have our regular season premiere of the Soccer Down Here Game of the Week, and it's going to be the boys and girls games on these dates. Tuesday, February 4th, Norcross and North Gwinnett. We'll be at Tom Robinson Memorial Stadium for the boys and girls games there. Friday, February 21st, this one was the latest edition. Yesterday, Pope and Harrison. So we will be we'll be in Cobb County for Pope and Harrison on Friday, February 21st. Then we'll be on the road. We have Sprayberry and Dalton at Harmon Field and Chapel Stadium. Tuesday, March 24th, Sprayberry and Dalton. We'll be there for that. April the 3rd was the first game that we got on the board. We'll be going to Blairsville for East Hall and Union County. Reminder, both boys and girls games. And then our regular season finale is senior night for Social Circle and Oconee County. So we'll be in Watkinsville for senior night, Tuesday, April 14th, 5 games on the board, and we're chasing others in the grid. So that is where we are right now with the Soccer Down Here game of the week for high school soccer here in the state of Georgia.
Yeah, those will be audio broadcasts. Those will be a radio-style broadcast on the SDH app on soccerdownhere.net. You can listen to it later as a podcast edition if you so choose. We want to shine a spotlight on the growth of the high school game in the state because it's in an interesting spot where I think sometimes the high school game gets overlooked because it's not part of the Georgia youth soccer scene. It's kind of in its own little world at times, but it's an area that is really growing, and I think you've seen the effect of Atlanta United on it. You've seen the effect of just the growth of soccer as a whole on it. You've got student sections that are doing chants like they hear at Atlanta United matches, stuff like that. That's just really cool. So we want to cover that. We want to get both the metro area covered and get outside the metro area some. So it's going to be a lot of fun this season, getting out on the road, calling some more games, and seeing some great matches and matchups. We've got a few non-region matchups, but we've also got some region ones hopefully coming up, and some former state champions and some defending state champions. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yep, and so we're working on the rest of the schedule, and when we know games that will be on the grid, we will let you guys know. But it'll be good to go out and see everybody and add this to all the stuff here on the network.
All right, next, run to the post office to get some hats in the mail for people who have purchased them is going to be coming up here in an hour or two. So if you want a hat, we have the new Soccer Down Here hat. Scroll back on our timeline, go to the photos section, and you can see it. They're $25. It's $5 for shipping. Shoot us a message. We can take your money via PayPal. We'll get you taken care of. Get that hat out to you. We also have scarves. They are $20. We have a few beanies left. They are $20. Shoot us a message. Let us know what you need. Give us an address. We'll get it out to you. If you're looking for T-shirts or mugs, go to soccerdownhere.net. Follow the link to our store to get your gear. Mugs, hoodies, T-shirts. It's all available over at Teespring. And you can support the show. And this being the fourth birthday of the show, it's pretty nuts, and thank you for so many of you who have been part of it from the Peachtree Post days, from the early days of SDH when it was an hour long, not going into 8 minutes past 2 hours like we tend to do sometimes.
Or
thank
3
you.
hours like we did earlier this week.
Yeah, no, it happens. We're not special. We're not doing anything that other people aren't doing. We just are maybe crazy enough to do it as much as we do it. And the reason why we're crazy enough to do that is because you guys are awesome who spend your time with us and listen. So thank you. Thanks for all the interaction. Thanks for questions. Thanks for comments. Thanks for tweeting at us. Thanks for seeking us out. And you can seek us out again tomorrow morning. We'll be back at 9 o'clock. So mucha plata, y'all.
Mucha plata, y'all.